Okay, let's get started setting up this 8-page brochure. So here's how we set up a brochure like this. First of all, unlike the trifold, our trifold is just one page front and back, and each panel is just marked off with guides and fold lines. In a brochure like this, each page is its own page because how they print it can be changed with printer spreads, and we'll talk about that later. So our pages are 8.5 by 11. Now we want 8 pages on this brochure because we talked about how all brochures have to be in denominations of 4 because of the way they fold. So we're going to go with 2 pages front and back put together totaling 8. And we do want facing pages because that's going to arrange it in a way that kind of makes sense to us. It's going to give us a cover and then spreads and then the back page. On this one, we still don't want that primary text frame, and I'll tell you more about that later. Our column layout, now in this particular case, I do know how many columns I want, and I can always change this in the layout, but I know that I want this brochure to be laid out to a 5-column format with 0.125 gutter. Our margins, I'm going to give generous half-inch margins on this because it's not copy heavy. It's got images and only a little bit of copy, so we could afford probably even more margins than that, but we're going to stay with that. And then, as usual, always put 0.125 bleed because the whole brochure doesn't bleed, but one page in particular does, and that means we have to set it up for the whole brochure. We don't need a slug on this because we don't have to indicate fold lines. That's done with the pages being separate, okay? Now you can see how this is laid out. As we discussed, it's got the columns. The columns go to the margin, so the page is divided up with an additional half an inch around it. It has the 2 spreads, 3 spreads, and then the back page. So that's what they mean by facing pages. It lays a brochure out the way you look at it, which is really helpful. So before we go too far, let's put in our text. Set it off to the side. Now we have something new that we haven't done before. I'm going to show you how to set up master pages. So whenever you have a brochure like this or a booklet or a book itself, you need to set up parent page. It used to be called master pages, but that is politically incorrect. So now it's called parent pages. If you hear me refer to it as master pages, it's because I'm still a little bit not politically correct. Okay, so master pages, I want you to think about, you guys are getting in the groove of using style sheets. I want you to think of master pages as style sheets for the page. A style sheet for what is placed on that particular page. So this brochure is very simple. It's only going to have one master page, and that is for this little bit of information that goes at the bottom of every page. So let's go back to our document and we'll find that. And you can see on the top here it says on all pages. That tells you you're going to have to put it on a master page. You don't want to put that on each page and find the right location. If it's exactly the same on every page, that's definitely a master page item. So I'm going to delete that so I know I've used it. I'm going to go to the parent page, and I'm going to set this at the very bottom of our columns, right on the edge of that grid. I'm going to paste the copy in there. And now we need to talk about type. And what I'm looking for on this, because the whole thing is about modern design with these modern chairs, I've gone to Adobe fonts, and I know that a sans serif is a very modern, clean type. But in this case, I want something kind of geometric. So it really looks structurally even and round, almost like geometric shapes, which is kind of the foundation of the Bauhaus school in Germany, and it's foundation of a lot of these chair designers that are going to be in this brochure. So once I knew I wanted a sans serif that's geometric, I also want no contrast in the weight of the type, meaning I don't want parts of it to be thick and thin. I want it to be perfectly even. So then when I look at my typefaces, the other thing I want to avoid is any cuteness. Like, do you see this A? Do you see how that it's almost got like a belly on it? That's too friendly. Do you see how the L curves up? That's a little bit too friendly for something that's about modern design. So I'm going to go with something that has a 1-story A. So this is a 2-story A. When you see it break into 2 parts, it's got the hook on the top and then the belly at the bottom. This is a 1-story A, meaning that it is still very, very geometric. So when I looked at these, I decided that the one that would work for me is this one. avant-garde Gothic. It's kind of a classic sans serif. It's very geometric. That only has 3 fonts in it, which isn't perfectly ideal, but for this particular brochure, I don't need much more than just a regular, a medium, and a bold. So that's going to work. And you can see how clean and well designed it looks. Okay, so I'm going to go with that typeface, and I'm going to start styling things. So it's going to start with this. So let's make this that avant-garde. Anything that's going to appear on every page, you do not want to make it too loud because it needs to be seen over and over again. So I'm going to set this, not the type box. Remember, when you're doing margins, you got to set the type on the margins, not the type box. So type's on the margin. This is 8-point avant-garde book. So let's try medium. I think when you're going 8-point, you can get away with medium. And then we're going to give this a lot of tracking, because tracking kind of takes down the weight of it also and makes it a little easier to look at. So I'm going to go out. I think I'm going to take this way out. Let's try to take this to 100. And also I'm going to make it all caps. So now that I've done that, I'm going to back off the weight and I'm going to go back down to book. So let's look at how this looks. Do you see how that has a real clean look at the bottom? And you can either put it in this particular brochure, because there's so much space, I think I want to set it on the margin, but you could put it below. If you had a brochure that had a lot of copy and you needed that column space to set things on, then you could put anything that appears frequently like this below the margin. But in this particular case, I'm fine with it above. Now that's the left parent page. So that's the parent page for every left-handed page in a spread. Now I need to copy this over to the right by just hitting Option or Alt, the Shift key, so it gets the exact same location. The only difference is this time I'm going to go flush right. So the one on the left appears on the left edge, and the one on the right appears on the right edge. So this is my parent. This is something I want to be on every single page. So when I go back now into my brochure, and this is the only really tricky part of making these parent pages, is you have to keep track when you're in the parent page and when you're in the brochure. So this is the brochure, this is the parent page. So I've seen it where people accidentally start building the actual brochure and they're still in the parent page. So keep an eye on that and make sure that when you start actually adding things, that you're in the pages and not the parent page. There's one other thing that we need to think about. When you add something like that you want to appear on every page, there might be pages where there is an image that bleeds off all 4 sides. What's going to happen to this master page? Everything that is the most current is the most top layer, right? So if you put an image right now on one of these pages, like if we went to the cover and we put a box that's, let's say, red, it would cover that master page item. That type has to appear over any image. So the best way to handle that is to simply call that the master or parent, sorry, hard to change. And then I'm going to put this layer, which just says layout. And there's, I can put everything on that, but make sure your parent page is above. Put that parent page above. And the other way you can make sure you don't accidentally build on that page is to just lock it. The other thing you need to consider is not all pages are supposed to have that type on it, right? So the master page is applied wherever there is an A. Do you see how the A parent, it says A parent? If you had a B and a C and a D, you can name them however you want. And that's how you can tell they're applied. You always want to put a letter before it so you know. It's applied to all of those pages. But let's say on the cover, we don't want that applied. So on the cover where it has our A, we could take this master page, and this is just a default page. It's always there. It never changes. It's called None. You just drag it onto that page, and now the small bit of information is on all the pages except for the first page. And if you changed your mind, you could go and drag A to it again. But we want None applied. So think of the usefulness if you were building, like when we start to do our booklet, if you're building something with a lot of pages, you might have a master page for the photography pages. You might have a master page for any chart pages. You might have a master for solid colors, anything that repeats itself. It's exactly like style sheets. When something repeats itself several times, then for uniformity, you want to get something that consistently repeats that information. So that's what master pages or parent pages do. So we'll only have one in this brochure. We're just going to start really simple.